California guards countless natural landmarks that attract millions of visitors every year, yet one of its greatest treasures remains intentionally hidden from almost everyone. It does not appear on official park maps. Rangers refuse to direct visitors toward it. Trails leading too close have even been closed to protect the surrounding forest. Despite standing taller than every other known living tree on Earth, its existence depends upon remaining almost invisible. Its name is Hyperion, and its extraordinary height has transformed an ordinary corner of Redwood National Park into one of the most closely protected places in the United States. For centuries, towering coast redwoods inspired legends among indigenous communities who understood these forests long before modern science began measuring them. These immense trees stood through changing climates, wildfires, powerful Pacific storms, earthquakes, and the arrival of entirely new civilizations. Long before roads crossed Northern California, they already stretched toward the sky, creating cathedrals of living wood where sunlight filtered through layers of evergreen needles hundreds of feet above the forest floor. Among those giants, one individual silently continued growing beyond every expectation. Decade after decade, century after century, it reached slightly higher than its neighbors until it quietly achieved a height unmatched by any known living tree. No monument announced its accomplishment. No visitor center displayed signs pointing toward it. Instead, the forest concealed its champion beneath layers of dense vegetation, rugged terrain, and remarkable secrecy. Hyperion belongs to the species known as the coast redwood, scientifically identified as Sequoia sempervirens. These trees occupy an extraordinarily narrow strip of land extending along portions of California and southern Oregon, where cool ocean air, persistent coastal fog, abundant rainfall, and moderate temperatures combine to create one of the most favorable growing environments found anywhere on Earth. Unlike many forests that experience harsh seasonal extremes, these coastal ecosystems provide remarkably stable conditions that encourage slow but continuous growth over many centuries. The coast redwood possesses biological characteristics unlike nearly any other tree species. Its bark can exceed 1 foot or approximately 30 centimeters in thickness, providing exceptional resistance against wildfire. Instead of relying solely upon seeds for reproduction, mature redwoods often sprout entirely new trunks from dormant buds around their base after storms, fire, or mechanical damage. Entire circles of seemingly independent trees sometimes originate from a single ancient parent, preserving genetic lineages across astonishing spans of time. Their roots tell an equally remarkable tale. Despite supporting trunks that soar well above 300 feet, or more than 90 meters, coast redwoods generally develop surprisingly shallow root systems. Most roots extend only several feet beneath the surface, while spreading outward across remarkable distances. Rather than anchoring themselves through depth alone, neighboring trees intertwine their roots with one another, forming enormous underground networks that distribute mechanical forces throughout the forest. During powerful Pacific windstorms, these interconnected systems allow entire groves to withstand stresses that might otherwise topple individual giants. Within this remarkable environment, Hyperion gradually emerged as the tallest known representative of its species. Today, careful measurements place its height at approximately 380.8 feet, equivalent to about 116.07 meters. Standing beside familiar landmarks provides perspective difficult to appreciate from numbers alone. Hyperion rises considerably higher than the Statue of Liberty, including its pedestal, which reaches approximately 305 feet, or about 93 meters. If placed beside an urban skyline, it would rival the height of roughly a 35-story building, yet unlike steel and concrete, every inch consists entirely of living tissue, transporting water, nutrients, and sugars throughout an organism hundreds of years old. Estimating Hyperion's exact age presents greater challenges than measuring its height. Determining the age of living record trees often requires avoiding destructive techniques such as cutting cross-sections through the trunk. Instead, researchers estimate that Hyperion likely began growing somewhere between approximately 600 and 800 years ago. During those centuries, kingdoms rose and disappeared across continents while the tree steadily added new layers beneath its bark. Generations of wildlife depended upon its expanding structure. Birds nested among its branches. Mosses colonized sheltered surfaces. Ferns flourished high above the forest floor where accumulated organic matter created miniature suspended ecosystems. Insects completed entire life cycles hundreds of feet above the earth without ever descending to the soil. Hyperion became not merely a tree but an elevated landscape supporting countless forms of life invisible from below. Remarkably, its existence remained unknown to science until relatively recently. Although countless explorers, loggers, researchers, hikers, and photographers traversed Northern California throughout previous centuries, Hyperion escaped widespread recognition because of the extraordinary complexity of old-growth redwood forests. Visibility often extends only short distances due to dense vegetation, fallen logs, thick understory plants, and the immense diameter of neighboring trunks. From ground level, distinguishing which tree extends highest into the canopy becomes nearly impossible. Everything changed during the year 2006 when naturalists Chris Atkins and Michael Taylor located the extraordinary redwood while surveying exceptionally tall trees within Redwood National Park. Both individuals had spent years searching remote portions of California's remaining old-growth forests using careful measurements, topographic analysis, and relentless field exploration. Their discoveries included numerous record-breaking trees, yet even they reportedly recognized, almost immediately, that Hyperion represented something extraordinary. Confirming a world record demanded precision beyond simple visual estimates. Measuring exceptionally tall trees requires specialized techniques designed to eliminate optical distortions common in traditional surveying methods. Researchers often employ laser rangefinders, clinometers, and advanced mathematical calculations capable of determining vertical height with astonishing accuracy. Every measurement undergoes repeated verification because differences of only a few inches may separate world records among the tallest living trees. When final calculations confirmed Hyperion's dimensions, botanists realized they had identified the tallest known living tree ever documented. Its height surpassed other legendary coast redwoods that had previously held similar distinctions, including remarkable individuals known as Helios and Icarus. Both remain extraordinary biological achievements, exceeding 370 feet, or approximately 113 meters, yet Hyperion continued standing just high enough to claim the global record. Scientific excitement spread rapidly through forestry circles, conservation organizations, and botanical institutions worldwide. Yet unlike discoveries that encourage public visitation, officials reached an opposite conclusion regarding Hyperion. Instead of publishing precise coordinates, authorities intentionally concealed its exact location. That decision surprised many observers, who assumed such an extraordinary natural wonder should become an accessible destination. Experience, however, suggested otherwise. Old-growth redwood forests function as delicate ecosystems despite their seemingly indestructible appearance. Their enormous trunks create an illusion of permanence, but survival often depends upon remarkably fragile conditions surrounding their roots. Unlike deep-rooted trees growing in drier climates, coast redwoods rely upon shallow root systems spreading across nutrient-rich soils near the surface. Constant trampling by thousands of visitors gradually compresses those soils, reducing essential air spaces required for healthy root function. Compacted earth limits water infiltration, decreases oxygen availability, and interferes with countless microorganisms responsible for recycling nutrients throughout the forest ecosystem. Damage accumulates slowly, sometimes remaining invisible for years before measurable declines appear in tree health. Because Hyperion already occupies an environment supporting one of Earth's rarest biological records, even seemingly minor disturbances carry disproportionate consequences. Human curiosity introduced additional problems wherever exceptionally famous trees attracted growing crowds. Visitors often stepped beyond established trails seeking improved photographs. Informal footpaths widened into permanent scars. Delicate ferns disappeared beneath repeated traffic. Fallen branches became souvenirs. Some individuals carved initials into bark or removed small pieces of wood despite strict legal protections. Even discarded food altered wildlife behavior within otherwise pristine forests. Officials recognized these risks long before Hyperion became internationally famous. Rather than encouraging tourism centered upon a single tree, they prioritized preserving the broader ecosystem responsible for producing such extraordinary growth in the first place. Keeping Hyperion hidden represented not secrecy for its own sake, but an effort to prevent irreversible damage driven by admiration itself. Ironically, public fascination intensified precisely because the location remained undisclosed. Amateur explorers analyzed satellite imagery, compared elevation maps, examined published research, and exchanged theories across online communities hoping to identify the elusive giant. Some ventured into remote portions of Redwood National Park, searching for unofficial routes despite repeated warnings from park authorities. Their efforts eventually produced consequences serious enough to justify stronger protection measures. Sensitive vegetation surrounding portions of the suspected area suffered increasing damage as unofficial trails expanded. Soil compaction became increasingly visible. Rangers documented environmental degradation, extending well beyond a single tree, affecting an entire section of irreplaceable old-growth forest. The irony proved impossible to ignore. A tree that had survived approximately 7 centuries of storms, earthquakes, lightning, and natural change now faced one of its greatest modern threats, simply because people wanted to stand beside it. California's remaining ancient redwood forests occupy only a small fraction of their original range. Before widespread commercial logging transformed the Pacific coast during the 19th and 20th centuries, coast redwoods covered an estimated area exceeding 2 million acres, or more than 800,000 hectares. Today, only a comparatively small percentage of those original old-growth forests still survives. Every untouched grove therefore represents not merely beautiful scenery, but an irreplaceable biological archive recording centuries of environmental history. Hyperion stands within one of those precious remnants, surrounded by an ecosystem that scientists value just as highly as the famous tree itself. Every fern, fallen log, stream, fungus, and neighboring redwood contributes to a living system that has developed over hundreds, and in many places thousands of years. Removing attention from the individual tree and focusing instead upon the health of the surrounding forest reflects an important principle in modern conservation. Hyperion did not become Earth's tallest living tree through isolation. It achieved that distinction because every element of its environment consistently supported exceptional growth across many centuries. Ocean fog plays one of the greatest roles in that remarkable success. During the warm months, cool air moving inland from the Pacific Ocean condenses into dense blankets of moisture that drift through the towering forests. Those fog banks do far more than create dramatic scenery. They function as an additional source of water during California's dry season. Redwood needles capture tiny droplets directly from the passing fog. Some of that moisture is absorbed through the foliage itself, while much more drips toward the forest floor, where it replenishes soil moisture around the extensive root systems. Researchers estimate that fog contributes a substantial portion of the annual water available to many coast redwood ecosystems, reducing drought stress during periods when rainfall becomes scarce. Hyperion also benefits from the region's moderate climate. Northern California's coastal environment rarely experiences prolonged freezing temperatures or the intense summer heat common farther inland. Instead, relatively stable conditions allow the tree to continue growing for much of the year. Every growing season adds another thin layer of wood beneath the bark, increasing both height and diameter through an almost unimaginably gradual process. Even after reaching world record dimensions, Hyperion has not entirely stopped growing. Measurements collected over time indicate that it continues adding small amounts of new wood each year, although the rate has slowed considerably compared with its younger centuries. Every additional inch requires extraordinary biological effort because lifting water to leaves positioned nearly 381 feet, or more than 116 meters, above the soil presents enormous physical challenges. Unlike animals, trees possess no heart capable of pumping water upward. Instead, they rely upon an elegant process driven by evaporation. Tiny pores within leaves release water vapor into the atmosphere. That evaporation creates microscopic tension within continuous columns of water, extending downward through specialized conducting tissues known as xylem. Each evaporating molecule effectively pulls another upward from below, creating an uninterrupted chain stretching from roots to the highest foliage. Gravity continually resists that upward movement. Friction within the microscopic tubes further increases the difficulty as distance grows greater. Every additional foot or every additional meter requires more energy to maintain the continuous water column without interruption. At sufficient height, the physical demands become so extreme that the uppermost leaves struggle to receive enough water for efficient photosynthesis. Researchers studying exceptionally tall trees have observed noticeable differences between foliage growing near the canopy and leaves found much lower on the trunk. Needles at the highest elevations tend to be smaller, thicker, and more efficient at conserving moisture. Their structure reflects adaptation to increasingly difficult hydraulic conditions where every drop of water becomes valuable. These observations help explain why scientists believe an upper biological limit exists for tree height. Although no invisible barrier prevents additional growth, the combined effects of gravity, hydraulic resistance, structural support, and energy balance eventually outweigh the benefits of becoming taller. Current research suggests that the maximum theoretical height for a tree lies somewhere between approximately 425 feet and 430 feet, equivalent to roughly 130 meters. Beyond that point, transporting sufficient water to the highest leaves becomes increasingly impractical under Earth's present atmospheric conditions. Hyperion therefore occupies a remarkable position close to that estimated natural ceiling. It demonstrates just how efficiently evolution has optimized the coast redwood while also illustrating the physical limits imposed by the laws of nature. Even the tallest living organism on the planet cannot escape gravity. Height alone, however, does not determine greatness among trees. Farther south in California stands another giant whose fame equals Hyperion's despite reaching a considerably lower elevation. General Sherman, located within Sequoia National Park, belongs to an entirely different species known as the giant sequoia. Although its height measures approximately 275 feet, or about 84 meters, its massive trunk contains more wood than any other known living tree on Earth. General Sherman outweighs Hyperion by an astonishing margin, because giant sequoias invest far more growth into diameter than extreme height. Their enormous trunks resemble living fortresses capable of resisting centuries of wildfire, storms, insects, and decay. Hyperion represents the opposite evolutionary strategy. Rather than maximizing volume, the coast redwood excels at vertical expansion. Its slender profile allows continued upward growth while maintaining sufficient flexibility to withstand coastal winds. Comparing the two record holders demonstrates that nature produces greatness through multiple paths rather than a single design. Nearby redwoods also compete for extraordinary heights. Helios rises approximately 376 feet, or about 114.7 meters, while Icarus exceeds 370 feet, or around 113 meters. All three belong to the same remarkable forest community where environmental conditions approach perfection for coast redwood growth. Scientists continue surveying remote groves using increasingly sophisticated technology, including airborne laser scanning capable of mapping entire forest canopies with extraordinary precision. These surveys occasionally reveal previously unknown giants hidden among rugged landscapes where few people ever travel. Even so, discovering a taller living tree than Hyperion becomes increasingly unlikely. Remaining old-growth forests have undergone extensive examination by professional climbers, botanists, foresters, and remote sensing specialists over many decades. While another record holder cannot be completely ruled out, any undiscovered competitor would probably stand within equally inaccessible terrain protected by dense vegetation and challenging topography. Hyperion itself illustrates just how effectively nature conceals remarkable wonders. Standing almost as high as a modern skyscraper might suggest visibility from miles away, yet surrounding redwoods collectively form an immense canopy that disguises individual trees from distant observation. Rolling hills, intersecting valleys, and overlapping crowns further complicate visual identification. Even experienced researchers sometimes pass remarkably close to extraordinary specimens without recognizing them. Climbing Hyperion remains an exceptionally rare scientific activity requiring specialized training, permits, and careful planning. Researchers ascending these giants discover an environment unlike any found on the forest floor. Massive branches extending from the upper trunk support thick mats of moss, lichens, ferns, and accumulated organic material. In some locations, those suspended soils become deep enough to support entirely new plants growing high above the earth. Tiny streams of rainwater flow across elevated surfaces after storms. Salamanders inhabit moist pockets hidden within bark crevices. Invertebrates complete their entire existence among branches hundreds of feet above the forest floor. Birds establish nests in locations safely beyond the reach of most predators. Every towering redwood functions as a vertical ecosystem containing habitats distributed from its roots to its highest crown. Protecting Hyperion therefore safeguards far more than a single organism. Conservation preserves an entire living community, occupying one of Earth's most extraordinary biological structures. Recognizing increasing pressure from visitors attempting to locate the famous tree, park officials strengthened protective measures in recent years. Access to social trails leading toward the surrounding area became prohibited, and individuals ignoring closures now face substantial financial penalties. Authorities emphasize that enforcement targets environmental protection rather than secrecy. Every unauthorized shortcut crushes fragile vegetation that may require decades to recover. Those restrictions occasionally disappoint travelers hoping to photograph the world's tallest tree. Yet Redwood National Park offers countless magnificent alternatives visible from established trails. Visitors can stand among hundreds of ancient giants reaching extraordinary dimensions without threatening the sensitive habitat surrounding Hyperion. The experience remains every bit as humbling because no photograph fully captures the overwhelming scale of these forests. Walking beneath mature coast redwoods often alters one's perception of size itself. Trunks wider than small houses disappear upward into dimly illuminated canopies, where individual branches resemble ordinary tree trunks. Sunlight filters through layers of evergreen foliage before touching carpets of ferns below. Fallen logs gradually transform into nurse logs, supporting entirely new generations of vegetation. Silence dominates except for distant birds, flowing streams, and the whisper of coastal winds moving through crowns nearly 400 feet overhead. Hyperion continues standing somewhere within that vast wilderness, growing almost unnoticed, despite holding one of the most extraordinary records in the natural world. Every passing season adds another thin layer beneath its bark, while storms arriving from the Pacific test the strength developed across centuries. Earthquakes occasionally ripple through Northern California, causing flexible trunks to sway gracefully rather than fracture. Fog returns with dependable regularity, delivering life-sustaining moisture that has nourished countless generations of redwoods before it. Perhaps the greatest lesson offered by Hyperion is not merely that life can reach astonishing heights, but that true greatness often survives because restraint triumphs over curiosity. Modern technology allows humanity to locate almost any destination on Earth within seconds, yet one of the planet's most remarkable living organisms remains intentionally shielded from mass attention. Rather than inviting crowds beneath its branches, conservation asks people to admire it from a respectful distance. That quiet decision may ultimately become the reason Hyperion continues holding its remarkable title for centuries still to come. Long after today's visitors, scientists, photographers, and headlines have faded into history, the world's tallest known living tree may continue lifting fresh green needles toward California's coastal sky, silently measuring time not in years or decades, but in centuries. Hidden within one of America's last great ancient forests, unseen by nearly everyone yet standing above every other living tree on Earth, Hyperion remains a powerful reminder that some of the greatest wonders are preserved not by being discovered, but by being protected.